welcome back to my channel. Winter is the darkest, coldest time of the year, especially in Norway. But now that we're entering springtime, I thought it'd be a fun idea to talk about winter in Norway and how I have acclimatized to the Scandinavian winters. Now, I originally grew up in the deserts of Arizona, so I was not at all prepared for winter when I moved here. We rarely saw snow growing up, and after I moved here, it felt like the snowstorms would last 6 months out of the year. So quite a difference from the Arizona desert. This last winter has been particularly hard on everyone. Our first snow was in Halloween, and it's been having blizzards nonstop for the last 4 months. On average, our temperatures have been between -15 and -20 degrees Celsius, which is crazy, and by far the coldest winter I've experienced since I moved to Norway. And that's not even mentioning that when I first moved here, I was not prepared for the winter at all. I came with a very light jacket and just cotton gloves and hat and scarf. So nothing special at all. I mean, my winter boots actually came from Costco, if you can believe it. Since then though, I have stocked up on some really important winter gear, and my winter wardrobe has improved greatly. It's pretty expensive, but if you're going to live here long term, you really need to invest in some good winter equipment if you're going to survive. Because of this, and because of how important winter clothing is to living in Norway, I thought I would show you guys all of the winter equipment that I have acquired since I moved here 3 years ago. Alright, so first things first, I have this really big winter jacket, and it's got this brand on it. Pretty much everybody has this brand of coat in Scandinavia. It is double lined and very poofy. It's a Svea coat, so that's very common. There's inside pockets, outside double pockets, so one here, and it's got this great hood. This is super warm, and before this I had the worst possible jacket ever, but the Svea brand is very well known in Scandinavia, and a lot of people have them and use them. So this is a rather short one. It only comes down like a little below my hip, but you can also get this in very long ones that go down almost to the knee. This is super warm, and I recommend wearing it all the time, especially with these reflex things on them. So it's very dark in Norway in the winter time, and when you're walking around downtown with lots of cars, you need to have these reflective things on your jacket so that cars can see you even in the dark. So it's a really great safety precaution. Now, another thing I have invested in is really great wool jumpers. So this is a classic version, and this is something that you don't wash very often because it's wool, but it is super warm and you can wear it all the time when you're going out underneath your coat. So I really recommend investing in wool sweaters when you come to Norway, just because they're so common and they really help at keeping you warm. Speaking of wool, I also have invested in some long john underwears. This is a DeVold brand. It's very thin, but it's great to wear underneath all of your pants and shirts. It's a matching pant and shirt combo, and it's very lightweight, but it really helps at keeping you warm underneath all your clothes. Continuing with the wool theme, I also have wool socks. Everybody has a couple pairs of these, and they're very common to wear indoors and outdoors, but it's very essential to keep your appendages very warm, and wool socks are a great way to do that. I also have a pair of wool mittens. Mittens are always a lot better than gloves at keeping your hands warm because all your fingers are touching inside them, and the wool is one of the most important things to wear in the winter to keep yourself warm. This is even a Norwegian brand, Nordlys, and I think it's very cute. I also have a matching wool hat to go with it, and this is what I'll wear on the medium cold days. I also have a scarf. This one isn't wool per se, but it is an electrical heating scarf. So there is a charger here, and there are these cords that run all throughout the inside of the scarf, so you can charge this and then turn it on, and it will heat your neck while you're walking about outside in the freezing temperatures. So this is really handy as well. Now, on the even colder days, I'm talking like -20 degrees Celsius, I also have these super industrious gloves for wearing outside, and these are also heated gloves. So similar to the heated scarf, you charge these, and then there's electrical wiring all throughout them to heat up all of your fingers. And the charge on this can last between like 6 to 7 hours, which is really handy. And it just has the remote control button right here. But this is only for the super duper cold days if you're gonna be outside for hours and hours. On the lesser cold days, I have these rechargeable electric hand warmers. They're very handy, and you can just press this button here to turn them on, and they have different settings of heat. So you can go from the lowest heat setting to the highest heat setting, and you just keep them in your pockets and just hold them in your hands. So this is something I would use more in the fall, but you can also put these inside your mittens, so you have these and then the mittens over them. And lastly, maybe most importantly, I have my spikes. So these are some winter spikes that you just pull on over your winter boots, and it allows you to walk on the ice without slipping and falling. This is really important. When I first moved here, my shoes were super smooth and I was sliding all over the place, but you just pull these on over your boots. They come in different sizes. If your feet are smaller, they have smaller sizes, and then they have bigger sizes for bigger feet. You just pull these on and then you're free to run on the ice and you won't do as much of that slipping and falling. People who've grown up in Norway don't tend to use these unless the conditions are very extreme, but I like to use them more often just because I'm not as confident on the ice yet as someone who grew up here. In summation, that is just some of the winter equipment that I have bought since moving to Norway. There is a famous saying in Norway, which goes something along the lines of "Det er aldri dårlig vær, bare dårlig klær." And that basically means that there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. And I couldn't agree more. Honestly, after I've invested in all of these warming equipment, I can be outside in like negative 30 degrees Celsius and it's a piece of cake. And that's also coming from someone who grew up in a desert where it would be like 100 degrees on a daily basis. But there are also some other adjustments that people can make to make living in the Norwegian winter more enjoyable. For example, when you're living here, you will often see parents, instead of walking their kids to school in the snow, they have these tiny little sleds and they pull their kids behind them on the sidewalk on the way to school because the sidewalks are just covered in snow and ice for the entire winter time. Another thing that I thought was kind of ridiculous when I first moved here, but I've slowly gotten more accustomed to, is letting infants sleep outside in the snow. I know it sounds a little crazy at first too, but what they do is they bundle up the babies really nice and warm and put them in their prams and then put the prams outside. So I've seen this happen at home where people I know will leave their babies out on the front porch sleeping in their prams, or even you'll see it outside cafes, just a whole line of prams with all the babies sleeping inside them while their parents are inside the warm cafe getting a coffee or something. And apparently this is supposed to build up the baby's immunity to the cold, and it's supposed to be good for them to sleep with all this fresh air around them. And another cute thing I've noticed with the kids in the winter here is the onesies. So often little toddlers, like ages 1 to maybe 4, will have these big parka onesies that they just go out in. They're like these little poof balls. It's super adorable and super warm. Now, while that is the fun side of winter for the kids, there's also some fun side for the adults too. Even though most people tend to spend most of their winters indoors, there are some outdoor activities you can do as well. If you ever go to any hiking locations in Norway, you should always bring some sheepskin to sit on. That's very common to sit on that in the winter. It is really nice because it's not only soft, but it also is a good insulator, so it keeps your bottom warm even when you're sitting on snow. There's also a common practice to have lots of bowls or fire pits when you're out in nature in the winter, and people love to sit around them, roast hot dogs, and drink hot chocolate. So it's a very cozy winter experience here. Another thing that's a big plus if you're really into winter activities is that some people tend to skip putting the spikes on their shoes and instead opt to go skiing on the sidewalks. If you're ever in Oslo or just anywhere in Norway, you're going to see a lot of people in the cross-country skiing outfits with cross-country skis on the public transportation or just downtown in the middle of the city, because there's so much snow just in the streets that you can actually ski on the sidewalk instead of just walking like a normal person. People love it. I've even seen it in the summer where when they can't ski anymore, they have these rollerblading skis that they use instead to keep up their training so that they can continue doing this skiing on the sidewalks in the winter. Not only can you ski in the middle of the city, but there's also a lot of nature reserves all around Oslo and the rest of Norway, and there's tons of public walking trails which are turned into cross-country ski routes in the winter. So it's a great place if you love skiing. And lastly, probably my most favorite winter activity of them all is saunaing. So of course you can sauna any time of the year, but in the winter it's extra special because the contrast between the cold and the heat is so extreme. In Oslo in particular, and in the rest of Norway, we have floating saunas where the saunas are literally floating on the frozen fjord. And what you do is you go in your swimming suit, you get nice and warm and sweaty in the sauna, and then you walk out into the freezing temperatures and literally jump into the frozen fjord to cool off and then immediately run back into the sauna. And it's really convenient and easy because you're already floating on top of the frozen fjord. They just have to, break a hole in the ice for you to jump in though. It's really rejuvenating and there's a big adrenaline rush that you get from it. I've done it a couple times now. I know it sounds crazy at first, but I really recommend it if you're visiting Norway in the winter to try the sauna and frozen fjord plunge. So yeah, Norway in the winter can be really fun and also really beautiful. Another thing in the winter, one of the most amazing things ever is the Northern Lights. And when you live in Norway, you can even see them in the southern cities like Oslo sometimes. We've seen the Northern Lights more in the last 2 years than in the last decade, I feel. They're so common and so many people have been flocking to the parks in Oslo to see the Northern Lights just dancing above their heads in the nighttime. Even though we've seen more Northern Lights, it's also been some of the most extreme weather conditions that Norway has seen in recent years. I know we had one of the biggest snowstorms of all time in January, and they even had to shut down the entire city, all of the public transportation, and I myself even got stranded at the office for several hours. It was really scary and I almost didn't make it home. But thankfully, I feel as if the worst of the winter is over. So now it's just a matter of enjoying the winter beauty while it lasts and slowly counting down the days until spring has arrived. But anyways, thanks so much for watching me ramble on about the crazy winter conditions in Norway. I hope some of my tips on my winter equipment helped you if you're thinking of visiting Norway in the winter or just traveling somewhere that has these really extreme winter conditions like Scandinavia. If you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below, and I'll see you all in next week's video. Bye guys!